Story number 3. Sean, we're going to go to you with story number 3. This piece coming out of the South Florida Business Journal. Let me go ahead and read you the headline, first couple graphs, and then I want you to comment. Headline: sales launch for second Pier 66 condo. Prices start at $5.5 million. Anybody doesn't know where Pier 66 is? Over in Fort Lauderdale, like the southern end of, if you will, you got 17th Street Causeway. Right when you go over the causeway, there was a place called Pier 66 for quite some time. There's a marina around there. It's very close to basically Fort Lauderdale beach, the sand, things like that. So first couple graphs, Sean, and then I'll ask you to comment. Here we go. Tavistock Development Company has launched sales of Indigo, its second condo at Pier 66 Hotel and Marina in Fort Lauderdale. The Orlando-based developer is building condos and villas at 2301 Southeast 17th Street, while at the same time renovating the historic Pier 66 Hotel. The project will include a marina with restaurants and shops, which are also under construction. Tavistock launched sales for the first 11-story condo, the 31-unit Azul, in 2022. While it didn't provide an update for how many of the units were actually sold, developer has now started sales for the 30-unit Indigo, which also will rise about 11 stories. Most units in Indigo will measure 2,900 square feet with 3 bedrooms and 3.5 bathrooms. But there will be a 58,024 square foot penthouse with panoramic views of the intercoastal waterways and the oceans. Prices start at $5.5 million. Sean McCaughan, my question to you is not necessarily talk about the real estate market in Fort Lauderdale, which you can, but a lot of the writing you used to do when you worked over at Code Miami, you were the founder of it. A lot of the stories you do, which appear in glossy magazines. I guess you're working right now for, you worked on a project that's coming out on the Gulf Coast of Florida. A lot of it has to do with the architecture and the design and the feel and the vibe. I'm just wondering, could you give us your take as to maybe this project, and maybe you're aware of it, maybe you're not, but maybe you can compare and contrast the vibe of Fort Lauderdale versus the vibe of Miami. How are they the same? How are they different?
First, can I ask one thing you read there?
Please.
Did you say the penthouse was 58,000 or 5,800?
Oh, no, I must have misspoken. If I said that, it's 5,824 square feet. 5,824.
That makes a lot more sense.
Thank you for correcting me.
I was, that would be fascinating if it was 58,000. Well, Pier 66 is centered around this. The original old hotel is this really iconic tower that's very Frank Lloyd Wrightian. I think the design was, I don't recall the architect. It might have been Dan something or other, who's done a lot of Fort Lauderdale stuff. But I believe it was inspired by a design by Frank Lloyd Wright for something in New York, I think. And especially for the time, like this mid-century 50s, 60s thing that looks very much like spaceship landed on a kaleidoscope, or kaleidoscope. I would say spaceship landed on a kaleidoscope turned inside out. Paint that picture. So Fort Lauderdale did have a time when architecture was quite progressive, I think. But I've always kind of architecturally, I've always thought Fort Lauderdale is the place people go to when Miami's become a little too intense for them, which is why people go to Fort Lauderdale for a lot of other reasons too. Why families or, retirees or that kind of demographic goes up there. And it's also, somewhat more affordable these days. I don't even know if that's true anymore. I mean, $5 million per a condo, that those are Miami prices. But if you look at the design of this Indigo, okay, it has pools on the balconies, but to sound extravagantly decadent, so do a lot of other 5 million condos in Miami already have pools on the balconies. I mean, besides that, it's very boxy. The one next door that the article mentioned, Azul. Yes. There are, probably 24 towers in Miami that I could think of that look a lot like it already. Has that Architectonica look. I don't know if it was designed by Architectonica. I tried to look up the architect of the Azul. I couldn't find it, but it's probably the same architect as Indigo, which is some random firm in Palm Beach that I hadn't heard of. But it's and to be a less pushy version of Miami design wise isn't necessarily thing. Being designed forward takes mental brain power sometimes. I mean, some people just like, to be rich and happy and not think about it too much. Which is very Fort Lauderdale, I think. Fort Lauderdale also doesn't have nearly as strong of a grasp on historic preservation, which is something that concerns me very much about, hoping that they do preserve the original Pier 66 tower, and bring it back to what it originally was, which was a fantastic design. The original tower part of the original hotel and its tower, like I mentioned earlier. But Fort Lauderdale doesn't have historic preservation laws, doesn't have, an historic preservation office or anything. So, they could have just torn it down if they wanted to, but luckily the iconic nature of it, encouraged it.
Sean, follow-up question for you. Just because you architecture, I don't know anything about architecture. I mostly focus on numbers. So in my mind, when I think of like Spanish Mediterranean design, I'm going to think about like Coral Gables.
Yes.
If I think of Art
Yeah.
Deco, I'm going to think about South Beach.
Mhm.
When you think of Fort Lauderdale, what can you communicate to somebody like me? How is Fort Lauderdale's architecture defined? And for a simpleton like me?
Well, it's very mid-century, it's
Okay.
like the Yankee Clipper Hotel, that's sort of an
Okay.
abstracted modernist version of a clipper ship, really. Or organic Floridian modernism, which is a very sort of post-war mid-century thing. Yeah, it's also very suburban, so it's maybe a slightly more Floridian version, a more Floridian version of suburbia, really, like, with carports and with a lot of jalousie windows. And, brise soleil kind of screens and stuff. Maybe a less extravagant version of Palm Springs, but that is quite a stretch. But it's that era that most, I would say most of Fort Lauderdale's, because the post-war was really where Fort Lauderdale boomed, and originally in that era it was a spring break hotspot. I mean, it was where the boys are from the movie, Where the Boys Are,
That's right.
which was set in Fort Lauderdale. So if you want to know, what Fort Lauderdale is supposed to look like, or I shouldn't say supposed, but like what many people think of as iconic Fort Lauderdale, it's that, I guess, minus beer pong.